Brigstow, the city by the bridge. That's the name the Saxons gave to the place that would one day become the city of Bristol. But after 1,300 years of occupation, do any traces of the original settlement remain? Join me now as we go in search of Bristol's forgotten past. Located along the Avon River as it begins to empty into the Severn estuary, Bristol is the largest city in the southwest of England. A major port city since the Middle Ages, the city's origins have long been tied with the waters around it. In fact, the city of Bristol grew up around a bridge that crossed the Avon River. The modern Bristol Bridge stands near where the original would have been built. It leads to the Old City District, so named because it represents the oldest buildings in the city of Bristol. Located near the heart of the city, this area lies on top of the original Saxon settlement. The hundreds of years of growth and rebuilding have erased the original structures which lined the city streets, making it difficult to picture the Saxon city of Brigstow. The streets themselves, though, hold clues to how the 9th century city may have looked. The clue to the city's origins lies in the layout of the streets. In this case, you can see the remnants of a grid pattern in the city's oldest section. This alignment is typical of a type of Saxon fortification called a burh. These fortified cities became prominent during the rule of Alfred the Great and his children around AD 900. The town of Bristol was on the border between the kingdoms of Wessex to the south and Mercia to the north, and its fortification was essential during this period of increased Viking raiding along the English coast. For Bristol especially, even for a burh, it boasts significant natural defenses in the form of the two rivers which surround it, the River Avon on the south and the River Frome to the north and west. In fact, the River Frome used to empty into the Avon, exactly where I'm standing now. So what happened to this significant natural moat? In a massive building project in the 13th century, the River Frome was diverted from its original course as the city outgrew its previous boundaries. It was used to form a massive wharf to support the city's growing shipping industry. As time passed, the river was used as an open sewer until it became such a health hazard it was covered over. The river still flows directly beneath Bristol city center today. Natural borders were only a part of Saxon Bristol's defenses, as like other burhs, a wall was built around the entire city just inside the river boundaries. This controlled access to the city, providing a few select bridges which approached the city through gatehouses. Even though we can clearly see on modern maps where the original walls to the city would have been, finding them today can prove quite difficult, except for one small section known as St. John's Gate, which survived the growth of the city by being incorporated into the Church of St. John in the 14th century. Even though the masonry is quite modern, it stands today on the site of the presumed entrance to the Saxon city. The gate itself is decorated with statues of the mythical brothers Brennus and Belinus, added in the 17th century. Brennus, a Celtic prince of the 5th century, is believed by some to have contributed to the growth of the city, but there is no evidence for Brennus having ever existed, or even that Bristol was founded before Saxon times. To the east of the Old City, we find Castle Park, which with its open green spaces and the ruins of St. Mary Le Port and St. Peter's, strongly resembles the open meadows which would have existed here during the Saxon period. But what we see now is a modern construction. Built in 1978 and renovated in 1993, Castle Park was built after incendiary bombings in World War II leveled the surrounding area. The spot where the park now stands held some of the oldest buildings in the city of Bristol, remnants of the original medieval market that once stood there. Castle Park today is built to reflect the fortification which once stood on this spot before the market town. One of the first major changes in the city of Bristol's layout came shortly after the Norman conquest, when in 1080 the Normans built a motte and bailey castle east of the city itself. Originally just an earthen mound with a stone tower atop of it, the Normans would expand the city's walls to encompass all of what is now Castle Park. The castle itself became a prominent feature in the landscape of medieval Bristol, and by the mid-13th century, it was a fully stone enclosure with a prominent keep. The remains of the foundations of the keep can still be seen since the original excavations carried out by the Bristol Museum were never refilled. Only a few parts of the original castle remain, but one section of the wall can still be found by the determined searcher. Tucked into the south side of the park in an overgrown and heavily graffitied area, a section of the original walls can still be seen. A great deal of this is in fact later additions meant to shore up the masonry, but the original castle structure is quite distinct. If you look at the mortar next to these arrow-slit windows, you'll notice that it's red. Made from local materials, it would have made for quite the colorful castle. Though not nearly as visually impressive, excavations in the area carried out before the park was constructed uncovered this sally port, which would have allowed access from inside the castle down to the moat in the event of a siege. The sally port itself was silted in by the 15th century, and the remains of a small Indian monkey, among other things, were found inside the fill. Sadly, one of the best preserved aspects of the castle lies inside this brightly colored locked building called the King's Hall. Inside, 2 arches from the entrances to the original King's Hall of the castle still survive. This structure exists now as a Grade 1 listed building to protect the arches, but all public access is closed. In fact, much like the rest of Castle Park, the arches seem to have been forgotten. Bordering the Old City in Castle Park is the gallery complex known as Broadmead. Though seemingly unrelated, if you go to a secluded corner of the complex, you can see some of the original hope and glory that was intended for Bristol's distant past. These 3 signs stand a silent vigil over the door leading out to the park, and as hundreds walk by them every day, they miss the signs which tell of Bristol's beginnings as a Saxon settlement, the construction of the Norman castle, and its expansion into a medieval port city. As fresh-looking today as the day they were installed, the sign's last sentence, which reads, "Coming soon in 1993, serves as a poignant reminder of the amnesia which has fallen over Bristol's oldest remains.